way, or whatever you want to call it. The Imam says that if you have a good habit, that you use the blessing that you have. If you're someone who, I don't know, recites Tasbihatul Zahra after each prayer, prays Salatul Wutayra, prays Salatul Ghufayla, Salatul Layl, or you check up on your parents frequently, make sure you don't stop these good habits. Make sure you maintain them. Because you don't know what buttons are you're pushing. You don't know what you're doing that might end up you losing a great blessing in your life. Number 3, the Imam says, kufranun ni'am. When somebody begins to dismiss the blessings provided to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kufran is to either dismiss this blessing, to not care about it, to not respect and acknowledge it, or it could be for lack of gratitude, for lack of thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessings that you have. In English they say, count your blessings. Just every once in a while take a moment and think about all the good things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, lest you are ungrateful. Because when you show ungratefulness, Allah might take a good blessing that you have. Finally, the Imam says, tarku shukr. This is more specific. Those who aren't thankful, those who don't appreciate what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them, Allah will take the good things that He has given them. Then the Imam recites the verse in Surah Al-Ra'd, verse number 11. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin. Allah doesn't take away the good things that you have. Allah doesn't, we usually look at this verse in the negative sense. That if we don't change ourselves, then we won't be able to change things in the world. But no, the Imam is talking about the other side of this verse, the positive aspect of it. That Allah wouldn't take something that's good from your life unless you ruin something else. Unless you fall into one of these sins. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Moving on. The Imam says, الذُّنُوبُ الَّتِي تُورِثُ النَّدَمِ. There's a category of sins that create regret in a way that is irreversible, irrevocable. The kind of regret that sticks with you, where you feel like, I wish I hadn't done that. What are they? The Imam says, قَتْلُ النَّفْسِ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ. To kill someone. Now, most people don't set out to go and kill somebody. Usually, there has to be a series of events that lead up to the murder. There has to be a series of things that act as preludes to the murder. The Imam says, if that were to happen, you will regret doing so, not just for the rest of your life, but also in the afterlife. Then the Imam mentions the verse about Habil and his brother Qabil, Cain and Abel. When Qabil killed Habil, the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells us, فَأَصْبَحَ مِنَ النَّادِمِينَ. He regretted doing it right after killing Habil. But can you bring him back to life now? Can you fix this? There's no way to fix it. He's gone, and you'll have to face the consequences. Number 1. Number 2, the Imam says, تَرْكُ صِلَةِ الْقَرَابَةِ حَتَّى يَسْتَغْنُوا. You have kin, and you have relatives and family members who are poor. They're struggling financially. But you keep putting it off. You don't help them even though you can. When they become wealthy and don't need you anymore, when they become self-sufficient, the Imam says, يُورِثُ النَّدَمِ. You'll truly regret it. Maybe because of the consequences of this sin, you'll have to answer to God on the day of judgment. Why didn't you help them? Why didn't you look after your kin? لا صدقة وذو رحم محتاج, the hadith says. If you have family members who are poor, you're not allowed to give sadaqah to charities and whatnot. You have to prioritize your family. So many of us have families in Iraq and Pakistan and India and Afghanistan and elsewhere who are struggling. And I'm just satisfied that I gave £2 to the poor. I put £2 in the piggy bank and I'm going to donate that to the poor as if I've done my job. You have to prioritize your own family. You have a responsibility towards them. So the Imam says that once they become self-sufficient, you'll really regret it. Either because you failed to uphold your duty towards them, or because you'll realize what you missed out on in terms of thawab and reward. The third thing, the Imam says, تَرْكُ الصَّلَاةِ حَتَّى يَخْرُجَ وَقْتُهَا. To avoid praying until the prescribed time expires. يُورِثُ النَّدَمْ وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Keep putting it off, keep putting it off. No, I'm watching TV. No, I'm playing this game. No, I'm speaking to my friends. No, we're having a fight. Somebody told me the other day, he said, there was some beef between me and someone else. So he said, let's go out and talk about it. So we went and we spent the entire night debating and arguing and fighting. And then he goes, let me just put it this way, Sayyid. None of us prayed Fajr that night. I said, what the hell are you talking about? You miss Salah just like that because you're talking? Because you're fighting? Let me share a beautiful hadith and an insight that came to my mind the other day. We have a hadith that says, when you pray Salat early with the adhan, this is a blessing for you. It's a ni'mah. It's a wonderful station that Allah rewards you with. But when you put it off and pray towards the end, right? This is you fulfilling your obligation and your duty. Now, what's the difference between these two? Let me give you this example. If you were invited to someone's house over dinner, if you show up on time, now most of us will strive to show up on time because we know dinner is served at 8 p.m. If I show up on time, I will enjoy the meal, I will enjoy the company, I will eat food that's warm and prepared recently, and it's just an all-round enjoyable experience. But if I show up an hour after that, what happens? It's just food that I have to eat because I need the nutrition. I need it to survive. That's the difference. If you do it on time, you're actually receiving incredible rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you do it towards the end, you've simply fulfilled what you have. You've ticked that box. Don't expect anything in return from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why we have another hadith that says the difference between praying on time and putting it off until towards the end. That's not even when it expires. No, you do it within the time frame, but you put it off until it's very late. The Imam says the difference between this and that is like the difference between the dunya and the afterlife. That's a big gap. Now, the Imam in this hadith is saying that if you put it off until it expires and becomes qada, this is a sin that produces regret. Yurithun nadam. I don't know how we'll feel on the day of judgment that I put off my salah until it was too late. Finally, the Imam says, Tarkul wasiyyati wa raddil madhalim. One of the things that causes regret is not writing your will. Many people don't, especially those who are younger. And I've been saying for a long time, write your wills. Don't worry about your age. Don't worry about the average lifespan of people in this country or that country. Write your will. The hadith says that writing a will extends your lifespan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lets you live longer. Imagine, you get extra credit. The Imam here says that not doing so causes regret. وَرَدِّ الْمَظَالِمِ. When you know you've hurt people or you've taken from people things that they didn't allow you to take, or any mistakes that you've made in your past, there's a thing called Raddul Madhalim. And Raddul Madhalim is you giving back what you owe to other people, seeking their forgiveness for any transgressions and mistakes you've made. Or if you don't know what you've done, you're not sure, you were a youth, you were too young, it was a long time ago. Raddul Madhalim is you take a portion of your money, you give it to your marja and say, dispense it as you will. This will compensate for that. If you don't do this, yurithun nadam. Finally, the Imam says, مَنْعُ الزَّكَاةِ حَتَّى يَحْضَرَ الْمَوْتِ وَيَنْغَلِقَ اللِّسَانِ. Not paying zakat, which includes khums. which includes all the obligatory alms that we have to pay, if you avoid doing this, you will taste the remorse and the regret when the tongue is locked up and the soul is about to be extracted. But at that point, it's too late. يورث الندم. Moving on. الذنوب التي تنزل النقم. There's a category of sins that produce an immediate, perhaps we can say spontaneous, revenge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't let this just go by. If you commit any of these sins, get ready for their repercussions, which come almost immediately. What are they? The Imam says, عصيان العارف بالبغي. When you disobey Allah by oppressing someone knowingly. You know this is wrong, but you do it anyway. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Azizun Dhul Intiqam. Tunzilun Niqam means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will avenge this because you've hurt someone knowingly. 2. التطاول على الناس والاستهزاء بهم والسخرية منهم. When you mock other people, when you make fun of other people, when you hurt them by saying something that's meant to be funny in front of your friends and whatnot, but you hurt that person's feeling deep down. And it's a very deep wound. It's very hurtful. If you've ever been at the receiving end of this, you know what I'm talking about. Don't ever do that to other people. If you do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will avenge this sin in this life. Again, we're not even talking about the akhirah. The other category, the Imam says, الذنوب التي تدفع القسم. There are sins that repel your prescribed sustenance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah has decided to give you this much, to give you this house, to give you this car, to give you this wife, to give you this husband. These are things that Allah has divided amongst us. There are sins that repel this. They prevent these livelihoods and sustenances from reaching us. And then we wonder why we're struggling financially. What are these sins? Number 1, إظهار الافتقار. It is when people pretend to be poor. Many people have this disease. I don't know why. Why do you say things so as to give the impression that you're struggling financially when in fact you're not? Why do you complain about your financial situation, giving the impression that you're poor? إظهار الافتقار. Number 2, النوم عن صلاة الغداء. When someone sleeps through prayer, in particular, Salatul Fajr, Salatul Subh. When someone misses Salatul Fajr, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, a month, years sometimes, and then we wonder why we're struggling. Number 3, istihqarun ni'am. When you take God's bounties lightly, you don't really appreciate them, you don't even see them. And you see people like that complaining all the time. Look at me, look at my life, look at how miserable I am. Well, look at all the good things that you have. Istihqar. Finally, the Imam says, shakwal ma'bud azza wa jal. When you complain to others against what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. For example, someone is born with a disability. Someone isn't the most beautiful person in town. Someone has disadvantages and issues. Everybody has disadvantages. Am I right? Everybody struggles with something. But when I start complaining about it, look at how miserable I am. I was born into this family. Poor. They don't have any, money to leave behind. They come from this ethnicity. They come from this country. Shakwa al-ma'bud Azza wa Jal, the Imam says, تَدْفَعُ الْقِسَمِ. It pushes away the things that Allah had already destined to reach you, but they never do. Next category, الذُّنُوبُ الَّتِي تَهْتِكُ الْعِصَمِ. There's a category of sins that pave the way for other sins. Na'udhu billah. تهتك العصم means they violate the sanctities, violate protections. In other words, your spiritual immune system gets compromised. By committing this sin, I'm opening Pandora's box. And it opens the door towards many, many other sins. What are they? The Imam says, Shurbul Khamr wal ayadu billah. Drinking intoxicants, drinking wine. Why does it open the door for other sins? It's obvious. God forbid, when someone drinks an intoxicating beverage, they can't think anymore. And if they can't use the faculty of the intellect, they'll do the most atrocious things, the most vile things. And somehow, in many countries, I was drunk is perhaps not a perfect excuse, but it's kind of acceptable. Oh, he's just drunk. Leave him alone. Well, why did he get drunk? Why lose your own ability to think in a rational way and lose the light that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you to see and distinguish right from wrong? Shurbul khamr. Number two, it sounds less obvious, but it's linked with the first item. What is it? Al-la'bu bil-qimar. Gambling. And in many ways, and I've done a lot of research about this, gambling produces the same result as alcoholism, as drinking intoxicants. It's addictive, it's impulsive, and it causes people not to think. And the stories of gamblers who end up selling their children's family parts and organs are just a reminder of how evil this act is, gambling, even on a small scale. Again, moving on very quickly. Number three, تعاطي ما يضحك الناس من اللهو والمزاح. It's when someone is trying to be jovial and funny in a gathering by cracking too many jokes. Again, the link is less obvious, but subhanAllah, if you think about it, it does the exact same thing, which is that because I'm trying to be funny, because I'm trying to be jovial and comical and be accepted by my group of friends as the funny guy in the group, I crack one joke after another, and before I know it, there is ghibah, there is slander, there is accusations, there is all manner of sins that follow because of that. You know how some people, they have this anxiety if they're sitting in a group of people in a gathering, they feel anxious if nobody's saying anything. So they hate awkward silences. I think we all have it more or less, but perhaps some more than others. And so they feel like they need to break the silence. And so they say something totally stupid, totally, not planned in advance, without thinking about it, and that backfires on them. Keep trying. The idea is to be accepted, to fit in, to make others laugh so they enjoy my company. Again, why do you need to prove yourself? Why do you need to be liked by everyone? Why? Just be yourself. Be respectable. Be quiet. قُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ اصْمُتْ. Either say something useful or just be quiet. So the Imam says, تَعَاطِي مَا يُضْحِكُ النَّاسِ. The one who's always trying to crack jokes and be funny, this produces the same result as those who drink and those who gamble. In that, it is الذُّنُوبُ الَّتِي تَحْتِكُ الْعَصَمِ. You become a loose cannon. You start doing things that you didn't want to do to begin with. What else? ذِكْرُ عُيُوبِ النَّاسِ. It is when you start mentioning, not even mocking, just mentioning the flaws and faults of other people. What's it to you? Work on yourself. Fix your own flaws. Why talk about other people? You have plenty of flaws. I have plenty of flaws. Let's focus on those. ذِكْرُ عُيُوبِ النَّاسِ leads to هَتْكِ الْعَصَمِ. Finally, the Imam says, مُجَالَسَةُ أَهْلِ الرَّيْبِ. Al-rayb, perhaps in the context of this hadith, means doubt. The Imam says, sitting with people of doubt. You know the kind of people I'm talking about? The ones who are like, who says this? Who says that? You know, what does this even mean? Where does this come from? When it comes to matters of religion and faith and belief, they suffer from the disease of doubt. By spending time with them, you will acquire the same disease. And it will pave the way for many, many more sins. Avoid sitting with them. Next category, الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. The sins that cause chastisement to come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, perhaps on a communal level. What are they? ترك إغاثة الملهوف ومعاونة المظلوم. It is when you don't help someone who's right there in front of you, who needs your help, who is going through deep affliction and pain, or the one who's being oppressed, and you fail to give them the assistance that you could provide them with. This brings down divine chastisement and divine wrath. What else? The Imam says, تَرْكُ الْأَمْرِ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَالنَّهِي عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. When people stop enjoining the good and forbidding evil, which is one of the most lethal and deadly and dangerous diseases of our day, where it's not fashionable to tell someone that what you're doing is wrong. When it's repulsive for you to tell someone to do the right thing. And the response is always, what's it to you? It's none of your business. Everybody gets buried in their own grave. What are you talking about? One of the pillars of our faith is that we are a community. We're not just isolated individuals living in bubbles. And because we are a community of brothers and sisters in faith, we have a responsibility towards each other. If you see me doing something wrong, please go ahead and tell me. Advise me. And it goes a long way, by the way. Many times, and I've seen this, someone is corrupted by a particular sin. All it takes is another person coming from the outside, telling them, hey, you know this is wrong. Don't do it. And you could do so in the most cordial manner, in the most kind and affectionate way. That statement that you make will go a long way in making them wake up. But when we fail to do this, this becomes one of the sins التي تنزل البلاء on the entire community. They will all have to suffer because no one's enjoining the good and forbidding evil. Next category, الذنوب التي تعجل الفناء. There are certain sins that shorten your lifespan. Na'udhu billah. Imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed, let's say 80 years for you. 90, inshallah you live until you're 120, as they like to say. As unrealistic as that is. But inshallah you live a long life. But then we commit one of these sins and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cuts our life short. What are they? Nastajiru billah. The first one is qati'atul rahim. When I sever my familial ties with my kin, with my relatives. And I'll talk more about that later. Number two, al-yaminul fajira. When someone knowingly lies in order to right the wrong or wrong the right. I mean, sometimes a person might be forced to invoke God's name. Na'udhu billah, inshallah, even that doesn't happen. But there's a difference between someone trying to protect, let's say, their reputation, to preserve themselves, to stop their parents from beating the hell out of them, or whatever. There's like an actual necessity. And if I'm honest, I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's right, but there's a difference between someone who swears in God's name in order to protect themselves and someone who blatantly mentions God's name and swears to smear someone else, to hurt another person. Al-yaminul fajira is what it's called. The Imam says, doing this, yu'ajjilu al-fana. It'll cut your life short. What else? Al-aqwalul kadhiba. Someone who lies left, right, and center. Just a liar. Compulsive. Pathological. liar. This also shortens the lifespan. What else? Az-zina wal-'iyadhu billah. Adultery, fornication. Technically, zina means fornication. Adultery is when one of the parties is married. We seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But az-zina is even if they're not married. They engage in a relationship that's illicit, that is immoral, that is illegitimate, that is wrong. Zina cuts your life short. What else? Saddu turuq al-muslimin. This, I think, can be explained in two ways. The literal meaning is when you block the path of Muslims. One way to look at this is those people, and I'm sure you've seen some of them, who work as, let's say, immigration officers in countries like Iraq, in places where people go to pilgrimage and they do ziyarah, and they deliberately prevent people from doing ziyarah. They might have the authority to let this person into the country, to let them go and do their ziyarah and visit their imams, but they deliberately don't do that. They're just that evil. Or they can provide assistance and facilitate the ziyarah for people. They work in embassies, they work as, different positions. But they block the path of Muslims, Allah will cut their lives short. That's one way to look at it. The other way is those people who have this debilitating disease of discouraging people from going to ziyarah and hajj and umrah. It's like, what's it to you, man? Someone says to you, I want to go to ziyarah. No, don't go. You have your exams in like 6 months. Baba, the ziyarah is in 1 month's time. I want to go visit Imam al-Hussein. I want to go and receive spiritual nourishment. No, why would you go now? Leave it. Let's go together next year. Why stop people from doing the right thing? In one hadith, a person came to the Imam. He said to him, Yabna Rasulullah, a friend of mine asked me to go. He told me that he was going to go to Hajj, and I told him not to. I don't care about the excuse. He wants to go. You're the one who says to him, don't. I told him, don't go to Hajj. Leave it. Don't do it now. Do it next year or the year after that. The Imam said to him, what? You did that? فَأَبْشِرْ بِمَرَضٍ يَطُولٍ. Get ready for a disease that will last a long time. And in this hadith, the Imam says, instead of a disease, he says this will cut their life short. Finally, the Imam says the sin that causes lifespans to be reduced is idda'a'ul imamati bighayri haqq. When someone claims to be an imam, just like now, we have a bunch of lunatics and clowns, absolute moronic idiots who are coming out and saying that they are the Mahdi and whatnot. The Imam says this will cut their lives short. Inshallah, it happens sooner rather than later. Say Ameen. Next category, الذنوب التي تديل الأعداء. A group of sins, they give dominance to the enemy. They allow our enemies to take over us. What are they? The Imam says, قطع الرجاء. When you stop having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in providing you with assistance and help, you become hopeless. This is another category of sins. I don't think we'll have time to go through the whole thing because I want to focus on one passage, as I said. الذنوب التي تظلم الهواء. There are sins that cause the air to go dark, the ambience, the atmosphere to go dark. Maybe what the Imam means by this is that it causes a suffocating atmosphere. It causes society to become dark and depressed and, that sort of community. And one of those sins is as-sihr, magic. When black magic becomes rampant, I say black magic because that's the expression, but any form of magic, right, which is now becoming more and more common, unfortunately, in the Muslim world, in places like Iraq, India, Pakistan, Iran, and elsewhere, where people are practicing magic, not because they want to practice magic. I mean, there are those who say, I want to hurt such and such. So write me a potion, write me some spell. But oftentimes people slip into this because they're trying to repel some perceived, notion of magic. And so they're like, what I'm going through now has to do with magic. I'm sure my mother-in-law did something at some point, right? I'm sure my neighbor hated me since I was a kid, and so they did something. So they make the assumption that I am the victim of a magical spell. So they go to someone who writes these potions and who engages in magic in order to repel whatever black magic they think they've been victimized by, right? Any form of magic, whether it's to hurt someone or to protect yourself, the Imam says this causes the ambience to go dark. The whole community will suffer when this becomes more and more common. What else? عقوق الوالدين. When you mistreat your parents, when you mistreat them to the point where they disown you or they feel deeply hurt by you, this also causes the community to be in complete disarray. الذنوب التي تكشف الغطاء. Certain sins that take away the natural protections that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. We get exposed. Again, I won't go into the actual sins, just want to give you headings here. الذنوب التي ترد الدعاء. Some sins prevent prayers from being answered, right? Again, look up the hadith for more on that. الذنوب التي تحبس غيث السماء. Some sins cause droughts to appear. Some sins might contribute to global warming. Some sins contribute to crops dying and food not being available on a local or even an international scale. And these sins include منع القرض. Someone comes to you and they ask you for a loan. You can give them the loan, but you don't do so. We have traditions about giving loans and lending money to other people being more rewarding than giving them a gift. There's more thawab in giving a loan to someone than just giving them a grant or a gift or something that doesn't need to be paid back. And there are many reasons for that. My point is, I can help this person by giving him a loan. I don't. This causes حبس غيث السماء. Droughts appear because of this. And what else? قساوة القلوب على الفقراء وظلم اليتيم والأرملة. When we become stone-hearted, we become cold when we see someone who's poor. We have a lack of empathy. We're apathetic towards them. It doesn't really move us. I see someone who's poor, but I don't really care. Again, this is part of that category. And finally, oppressing orphans and widows. I want to focus on one particular passage, which is the sin of severing our relations with our family members, which was part of which category? It was part of the category of the sins that cut our lives short. So, really serious sin. Listen to this hadith by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The Messenger of Allah says, Salamullah ala al-Husayn, Silatul Rahim, maintaining your kind and good relations with your kin, produce the following results. تعمر الديار وتزيد في الأعمار وإن كان أهلها غير أخيار. It provides nourishment and blessings for the entire city. When I maintain my relations with my family members, the Holy Prophet says this causes a city, a town, a country to be vibrant, to be lively, to have good infrastructure. Again, the link isn't very obvious, but the Prophet says this allows nations to prosper. Number two, tazidu fil a'mar. It increases your lifespan. So if you don't do it, it decreases your lifespan. If you do it, it increases your lifespan. So it has a direct correlation with what? With how long you get to live. Right now, the biggest billionaires in the world, they're talking about longevity. They're talking about investing hundreds of millions of dollars to try and increase a person's lifespan. Because they're wealthy, they're rich, they want to enjoy their time as much as possible. So they want to live, instead of 90 years, they want to live until they're 110. Well, here's the secret. The Imam is saying, if you engage with your family members in a kind manner, Allah will increase your lifespan. And there are many, many hadiths about that. But I do want to share with you just maybe one or two hadith. The first one says that Qarun, who was the cousin of Musa ibn Imran, alayhi salam, who happened to essentially strike gold, become very wealthy, and as a result, he ended up becoming the wealthiest person at the time. Musa then received instructions from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that everyone must pay zakat. And the zakat that Qarun had to pay was 1,000th of his wealth. Imagine, you have 1,000,000, all you have to pay is 1,000, and keep 999,000 in the bank. Subhanallah. But he refused to pay. Not only did he refuse to pay, what happened was, and this is one of the characteristics, one of the features of sin, in that when I engage in a particular sin, I like to have other people join in. I like to not be the one that stands out. I don't want to be the odd one out. And so I strive to get other people to do the same thing, to try and make the sin look less grotesque, less ugly. So what Qarun did was that he tried to discredit Musa. That was his tactic. He's like, if I'm going to be the bad one, I might as well make everyone hate Musa. So he did a few things. The last straw was when he paid a wicked, sinful woman to accuse Musa in a public platform when everybody was there listening to Musa's sermon, to get up and say that Musa committed fornication with me, to try and smear him, to try and destroy his reputation. When that happened, the woman got up and she said, "Ya Musa, you're talking about piety and all that, but come on, we know what we did." Musa became enraged. Imagine, this is the prophet of God, someone who is a reflection of the wrath and anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just as he's a reflection of God's pleasure and mercy. Musa became incredibly angry, and Musa's anger is kind of well known. With one punch, he knocked the poor guy out, he killed him. He said to her, "Who did this? Who's behind this? Who paid you to say this?" The woman realized that she's dealing with Musa. He's a prophet of God. She said, "Look, I'll be honest with you, it was Qarun who paid me." The Quran describes that moment in vivid detail. It says, فَخَسَفْنَا بِهِ وَبِدَارِهِ الْأَرْضِ. Suddenly the earth opened, and Qarun and all of his wealth, everything that he owned, was swallowed up by the earth. It didn't stop there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then commanded an angel to go and to push Qarun deeper and deeper into the earth. And we know how pressure works. If you've ever tried to dive at 5 meters or 10 meters, you know what I'm talking about. The pressure is incredibly high. When you go into the earth, it's the same. So an angel was commanded to push Qarun down every day by a factor of the height of one adult person. So every day, it's almost like he's a nail and there's a hammer that's beating him down every day like that. The hadith says, one day as Qarun was being pushed down further and further, he overheard a supplication. What was the supplication? وَذَنُّونِ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا فَظَنَّ أَن لَن نَقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ فَنَادَى فِي الظُّلُمَاتِ. Prophet Yunus was in the belly of the whale, and he just so happened to be in the bottom of the ocean near a place where Qarun was being pushed down. He heard Prophet Yunus reciting these things, so he told the angel, could you stop for a moment? I want to speak to this man. So he spoke to him. He says, who are you? Yunus responded by saying, أَنَا الْمُذْنِبُ الْحَقِيرُ. I am the sinful person. I'm the one who's being punished in the belly of the whale. So Harun said to him, can I ask you, Qarun said to Yunus, he said, can I ask you a question? Whatever happened to my cousin Musa ibn Imran? He said, he's your cousin? Your Qarun? Musa's long dead. He said, well, tell me about his brother Harun. He said, he's also dead. لَقَدْ هَلَكَ. He said, well, what about Kaltham bint Imran, their sister that I was supposed to get married to? Is she alive? Is she okay? Yunus said to him, no, I'm sorry to say that none of the family of Musa and al-Imran are alive. They're all dead. فَبَكَى قَارُونَ. Qarun cried. He said, they're all gone. They're all dead. فَأَمَرَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى. Listen to this. The angel was instructed by God that because Qarun asked about his relatives, I want you to stop punishing him in this dunya. On the day of judgment, he will receive what he receives, but at least stop the punishment in this dunya. He simply asked about them. This is the simplest and easiest form of silatul arham. Brothers and sisters, I'll have to wrap up. But silatul arham is so incredibly important. Forget the punishment, forget the reward. But it's important because that's what we're meant to do. You see, maintaining your relationship with your kin isn't about reciprocity. It isn't about they did this for me, I'll do this for them. That's why silatul arham is not based on a reciprocal arrangement. It's not advantageous most of the time. If it was advantageous, if I was receiving a benefit, then it wouldn't be silat al-arham. It would be takaful. It would be like, you did something good, I'll do it in return. Whereas the hadith says, أَن تَصِلَ مَنْ قَطَعَكَ وَأَن تَعْفُوَ عَمَّنْ ظَلَمَكَ وَأَن تُعْطِي مَنْ حَرَمَكَ. Silatul arham is when you give to those who refuse to give you. When you forgive those who refuse to forgive you or hurt you. That's why it's called silatul arham. Don't expect anything in return. One of the senior maraja, I'll tell you this quick story and wrap up. I won't mention his name. One day his son goes to visit him. He said to him, son, did you go and visit your uncle, your aunts, your cousins, whatever? And he mentioned their names. And they had some issues between them. The son said no. The marja said to him, listen, my son, you think I became who I am thanks to my studies and my hard work and my years of labor? No. What made me who I am, a person of high honor and respect around the world, great recognition, because of one act. He said, what's that? He said, I had a brother, and this brother of mine wanted my daughter for his son. But because when they were young, there was doubt as to whether or not they've been nursed by the same woman. And that creates a problem. If they've been nursed long enough by the same woman, they become brother and sister, technically speaking. And so I couldn't give him my daughter because of that doubt that we had. I wasn't sure, but at least it was reason to be cautious. I told my brother, I can't give you my daughter for your son. My brother became upset. And he took this as an affront and an insult directed at him. So he left the holy city of Najaf. He moved to the holy city of Karbala. And for the next 20 odd years, my brother never spoke to me. He never visited me. He never had anything to do with me, but every single Thursday night when I went to ziyarah of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, I would go and I would knock on his door. And every single time, as soon as he'd open the door and see me, he would slam the door shut in my face. And I would say to him, I'm just here to say salam. You're my brother, I'm your brother. Imagine they do this to you twice and you'll stop doing it. 3 times and you're done with them for life. He said for 20 odd years, I don't remember the exact number, 25, 26 years, I did it week in and week out. He said, if I've become a person who's respected, it's because of this, not because of my studies, not because of my books, not because of my students. This is Salatul Arham. Anyway, I'll wrap up. As I said, one of the sins that darken the atmosphere is when an orphan is hurt. An orphan who's supposed to be looked after. An orphan who's supposed to see nothing but kindness and affection. They lack that affection from their parents. Subhanallah. One of those evil men, he ran after the orphan of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein on the 10th of Muharram. Imagine this girl who has just witnessed her father killed in the most merciless way. He ran after her. She says, he tells the story, he says that she stopped at one point when she realized that I had caught up to her. She looked at me and said, Ya Shaykh, hal taqra'u al-Quran? She appealed to the Holy Quran. Do you read the Quran? He said, yes, I read the Quran. She said, have you seen the verse in the Quran which says, وَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ? Don't oppress the orphans. He said, what do you mean? She said, أَنَا يَتِيمَةُ الْحُسَيْنِ, I am the orphan of Aba Abdullah. One hadith says, Sayyid ibn Tawus mentions this. He speaks about the fate of the killers of Aba Abdullah and what happened to them. أَجَرَكَ اللَّهُ بَقِيَّةَ اللَّهِ. He says that I came across a man who was blind. I asked why he's blind despite being young. They said, ask him, he will tell you. So I went to him. I said, what made you go blind? He said, I was one of 10 friends who decided to go and kill Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. But I never did anything. فَلَمْ أَضْرِبْ بِسَيْفٍ وَلَمْ أَطْعَنْ بِرَمْحٍ وَلَمْ أَرْمِ بِسَامٍ. I just went with them to see what happens. I never struck anyone with a sword. I never threw an arrow. I never did anything to Aba Abdullah. I just happened to be there. He says, one night, a man came to me in my dream. He said to me, Ajib Rasulullah. Come, Rasulullah has summoned you. I said, Mali wali Rasulullah. What does he want from me? So that man began dragging me to another place to face the Prophet. He said, I saw Rasulullah sitting on the sand with a bowl filled with fresh blood in front of him. There was an angel standing next to him. Rasulullah summoned my 9 friends. He would command the angel to strike them. One by one, the angel used the sword made of fire in order to execute them. And every time one of them was struck by the sword, I could see their souls engulfed in fire. Then Rasulullah said to me, he looked at me and said, Ya adu Allah, O enemy of Allah, why would you do this to my family? So I crawled to the Holy Prophet. I sat in front of him. I said to him, Ya Rasulullah, I swear to God, I never struck with the sword. I never threw an arrow or a spear. I didn't do anything. Rasulullah said to me, وَلَكِنْ كَثَّرْتَ السَّوَادِ. but you increased the number of soldiers who were there, circling my family, surrounding my daughters. You increased their number is what you did. Then Rasulullah put his finger in that blood. He dipped his finger. He put the blood on my eyes, and since that night when I opened my eyes, I had gone blind. I've thought a lot about this, ya mu'mineen, about this particular hadith and what Rasulullah was talking about. And all I can imagine is this: when Ruqayya looked out the tent, when Sukaina looked out, what they could see was an ocean of men. Yes, maybe he wasn't there to kill them, but he increased the number, he frightened them. These little girls of Abu Abdullah seeing 30,000 men. Initially they ambushed their father Abu Abdullah, and now they're all running towards them, not knowing what they're going to do. This is what Rasulullah is speaking about. However, there was another woman in the camp who saw a different scene. Ajarakallah baqiyatullah. They say that when Rubab looked up on the 11th of Muharram, she looked at Lady Zainab saying, Sayyidati, my mistress, Lady Zainab, didn't you tell me that Abu Abdullah buried my 6-month-old infant in the ground behind the tent? Lady Zainab would say, yes, he did. By God, he did. Rubab would say, then whose head am I looking at the top of the spear?
مأجورين إن شاء الله، موفقين لكل خير يا رب. مقبولة هذه العبارات والدمعات. أجري وأجركم على الحسين. بارك الله بك. رتب عزاك فدوى وروح لك. أقسم عليك بزين العابدين بدون سلام إن شاء الله بعد المجلس وأكون بخدمتكم. ترتب عزاك. بارك الله بك. رحم الله من ذكر القائمة من آل محمد. يا حسين ويمصابه قدم لي. بارك الله بك. يا ابن أمي ويصبي عيني. بارك الله بك. مأجورين إن شاء الله. يا حسين يا ذكرك بطرف لساني. بارك الله بك. يا ابن أمي ويصبي عيني. اسمعني. بارك الله بك. هذا العليل الحاير بموته، وين اللي يشيل الليلة تابوته، سما وجبته ماتي بحسرته يا مصيبة. هذا العليل الحاير موته، وين اللي يشيل الليلة تعبه. هذا العليل اللي يرب موته، وين اللي يشيل الليلة تعبوته، سما وكبته ما تبحسرته ونه سما وكبته ما تبحسرته يا مصيبة اليوم وناتي القلب تتعالى والحزن بين علينا هلاله فرقتي الغالي صدق شتاله نشوف ابو الباقر يودع عياله نشوف ابو الباقر يودع عياله بيني الأحبة يدور بعينه ويصيح أبويا الغالي شاوينه بيني الأحبة يدور بعينه ويصيح أبويا الغالي شاوينه ينتظر جيته ما تبحسرته يا مصيبة يا مصيبة للحاير بما وين اللي يشيل وين اللي يشيل الليلة سما وكبته سما وكبته ما تبحسرته يا مصيبة يا زين العباد شيرمها جروحه الشاعر الموفق أمجد صاحب الشطري زين العباد عظمها جروحه سنين خلصت من مصابة ونوحة سنين خلصت من مصابة ونوحة هذا النص حبيبي زين العباد عظمها جروحه سنين خلصت من مصابة ونوحة بخدة دمعاتي الهضم مسفوحة ومن عذاب الدنيا طلعت روحه ومن عذاب الدنيا طلعت روح من كربلاء شيب شعر راسه كلمة حسين بآخر أنفاسه من كربلاء شيب شعر راسه كلمة حسين بآخر أنفاسه مسموعة وانت ما تبحسرته يا مصيبة يا مصيبة كل شخص من يوصل لهالحالة تنده يمه تدنى يمه كل هلا وعياله بس ابو اليمه انفطر دلاله عاري 3 أيام ما حد شاله عاري 3 أيام ما حد شاله زين العباد اللي حضر يمه بذيك الحصيرة والسدوا لما نام بغربته ما تبحسرته يا مصيبة هذا العليل الحق سماو جبته ما تب يا مصيبة يا حزنك ألف بالدلال نوحقتي بس من نوحك حزنك ألف بالدلال نوحقتي بس من نوحك شفت المصايب والحزن بدموعك آيات وانك تحني حتى ضلوعك لك ما دهرك سالفت موضوعك حمزة الثما ليلقاك ليل الحزن بجروحك ليل الحزن بجروحك حزنك أخذ طول العمر بالعبرة وياك كان اسمعني واعي الزهرة خلصت لك بالنوايب حسرة ما تنسى يوم المذبوح نهرك دمع بسفوحك نهرك دمع بسفوحك ضبها مرت عليك ايش قد محن تتقوى كأنك غريب وبالجمر تتلوى ظهرك أشوف من الهضم يتلوى بالطاف عيشت هالمأساة دهرك يعذب روحك لحق دهرك يعذب روحك أمضت سنينك بالحزن والمدمع بعيونك يتشاهد جثث بالمصرايح شفت المآسي حدبت بالمضجع أعرف وينك مفجوع سهم المني يلوحك سهم المني يلوحك لاني الحديد على النبي بشجانك وانت الصبر جازم عبر بحزانك صرت بوينك بالبكي عنوانك خميس الخمسة اللي يبجون نقرأ الكتاب بطروحك نقرأ الكتاب بطروحك دهر المصيبة خيم للمحتوم ترسم ما حط النايب على المظلوم ولا يحصحن مصيبتك يا مسموم ولا يحصحن مصيبتك يا مسموم تالي تطفك ميشوم هدمك يا
لصروحك، موتك نشوف بكربله ضيع عينك، وانك اشد من السبع لحسينك. حان السفر هالليلة شفنا جبينك، يا موتك نشوف بكربله ضيع عينك، وانك اشد من السبع لحسينك. حان السفر هالليلة شفنا جبينك، حضر دمعك يا حسين جرح الختام بنوحك. يا الله تقبل منا هذا اليسير القليل يا الله. يا الله 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 يا رحمن يا رحيم يا مقلب القلوب، ثبت قلوبنا على دينك، ثبت قلوبنا على خدمة الحسين، ولا تحرمنا خدمة الحسين يا الله. ارزقنا في الدنيا زيارة الحسين، وفي الآخرة شفاعة الحسين يا الله. اللهم بحق هذه الليلة زين العابدين مريض كربلاء، شافي وعافي مرضانا يا الله. من أوصاني وأوصاكم بالدعاء، كثير من الناس أوصوني بالدعاء شفاء مرضاهم أطفالي يا الله. اللهم عجل لمولانا الفرج، واجعلنا من أصحابه وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك على في هذه الساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنوا أرضك طوعا وتمتعوا فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم بحق هذا الإمام المظلوم يا الله، من كان في مجلسنا هذا طالب حاجة، اللهم اقضي له حاجته ويسر أمره يا بأحسن قبولك يا الله. وإلى